Hi, I'm Denise. My stepfather had me handcuffed in court for treason. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was that no one flinched, because they'd been trained not to. My sister smiled for the cameras. My name disappeared from every will, every photo, every family list. They called it protecting the family. But if I was never truly part of it, what exactly were they protecting? And why did an admiral walk into that courtroom unannounced and freeze the entire room? What did he know? That they were desperate to bury. I could hear the heels of my shoes echo across the marble floors before I saw the crowd. The federal courthouse had never felt this cold, and it wasn't the air conditioning. It was the tension, thick, acidic, humming beneath every step I took. Security stopped me just long enough to confiscate the one thing I didn't want to part with, my mother's old tram CAI. I had clipped it into my coat pocket that morning, a private ritual. They said it was a potential sharp object. I said nothing. You learn early in rooms like this, when they're looking for something to take, they'll always find it. Reporters swarmed the entry, like they'd been waiting all morning, their badges swinging wildly as they jostled to get the shot. I didn't blink. I didn't raise my hand to shield my face. They already had what they wanted. A woman labeled traitor, showing up to court alone, walking straight into her own crucifixion. I made my way toward the defendant's table. The wood was polished, far too shiny for a place like this. I placed my palms flat against the surface, steadying my breath. That's when I heard the footsteps, measured, deliberate, not from behind me, but approaching from the aisle. "Ma'am, please stand." 2 U.S. Marshals, not rude, not rough, just routine. But when they reached for my wrists, I didn't flinch. I stood. I offered them no resistance. The cuffs clicked shut. I felt every stare in the room shift like a tide crashing toward the shore. Whispers rose like steam. I didn't need to look to know who was watching. Every face in the Mercer row turned toward me. Corwin, perfectly composed, leaned back in his seat like this was a performance he had already watched in rehearsal. "She should be ashamed," someone hissed from the gallery. "A woman, maybe a voter, maybe a friend of the family." Her voice didn't matter. What mattered was that she said it loud enough for the court microphones to pick up. I didn't react. I just stared straight ahead. This isn't about justice. It's about control. And the press knew it. Camera flashes popped, rapid and ruthless. One shot in particular, I could feel it, would run on the front page tomorrow. My wrists bound, my chin high, no tears. That photo would follow me forever. But I refused to give them the satisfaction of a breakdown. That was never going to be my story. Instead, my mind drifted. To Elowen's wedding. I had paid for half of it. Quietly, of course. No one asked me to. I just assumed that's what family did. I remembered showing up early to help with setup, only to find my name listed under support staff on the seating chart. Not even a +1. My place card read, Miss Drake, catering assistant. I confronted Corwin the next morning. We were alone, in his kitchen. "It's just a name," he said without looking up from his newspaper. "You erase someone name by name, then act surprised when they disappear." That was the moment the switch flipped. That day, I stopped asking for a seat at the table. I knew then they'd rather I served it. Back in the courtroom, the cuffs grew heavier with each passing second. My fingers tingled, but I didn't struggle. I counted my breaths instead. 4 in, 6 out. That same breathing pattern they taught us in training. Breathe past the pain, past the rage. This isn't the fight. This is just the room where the masks fall off. Vera sat in the second row. Her eyes met mine for half a second before she looked away. I noticed her nails were freshly done. French tips, like she had somewhere better to be. And Elowen, dear Elowen, smiling that soft, polished smile for the cameras, like this was just another family event. She wore the same necklace I gave her for her graduation, now paired with a tailored cream suit. I paid for that dress she wore down the aisle. She paid me back with silence. People think betrayal looks like screaming. Sometimes it looks like applause. The judge hadn't entered yet, but the courtroom was already buzzing. Journalists whispered across laptops, tapping furiously as they tried to get the angle, the emotion, the edge. I stood motionless. I wasn't there to perform. I was there to endure. And then it happened. The side door creaked open, loud, decisive. A hush fell over the room like someone had sliced through it with a blade. I didn't turn. I didn't need to. The cadence of the footfalls, polished, precise, deeply familiar, sent a ripple down my spine. Admiral Thane Rourke had entered the arena. He didn't say a word when he entered. He didn't have to. The room adjusted itself around him. That's the kind of presence Thane Rourke carried. Even the judge sat a little straighter. I kept my eyes forward, but I could feel it, every pair of eyes shifting from me to him, waiting to see what role he'd play in this twisted theater. 3 days before that courtroom turned into a stage, I had been standing at the back of a press conference. Uninvited, unwelcome, unseen. The Mercer Foundation's banner hung high across the wall, draped in blue and gold, the family crest freshly embossed. The air reeked of polished ambition, perfume, cologne, expensive hairspray, and the kind of forced laughter that comes from donors and local officials who know where their bread is buttered. Eowyn stood at the podium, bright and polished as ever, flipping through cue cards with practiced ease. I stood in the back row, not on any list, not even acknowledged by the staff. I didn't belong, not really, not to them. Then, right before she opened her mouth, Corwin rose from his seat. He moved with the certainty of someone who'd already decided the ending. He walked up beside Eowyn and gently took the microphone from her hand. "Let Daddy handle the hard part," he said, with that trademark Mercer grin that Charleston Press loved so much. They laughed on cue. He turned to the crowd. "Some of us have given everything to protect our values," he said slowly. "Some have chosen a darker path." My hands clenched at my sides. He didn't say my name. He didn't have to. I knew the art of omission well. It's how they write you out, without erasing a single word. I left the room before the applause started. Found my way to the press kit cleanup area in the back. Eowyn was there, already out of her blazer, gathering papers into glossy folders. I approached quietly. I didn't come to argue. I just wanted to speak to her, to remind her I was still flesh and bone, not a headline. "Eowyn, can I have a minute?" She didn't even look at me. She brushed past, her shoulder catching mine, knocking my coat from the chair behind me. I turned to pick it up. That's when I heard it. The soft, metallic clink. My mother's Tram CAI had fallen to the floor. It rolled once, twice, then stopped at Eowyn's feet. She looked down. Then she stepped over it. Didn't flinch, didn't pause, just kept walking. I knelt, fingers trembling, and picked it up as gently as I could. The same clip she used to beg me to let her borrow on Sundays, back when we still shared secrets and hairbrushes. Now she wouldn't even meet its gaze. I walked home. No limo. No black SUV. Just me and the uneven bricks of the historic district that once felt comforting, and now felt like they were rising up to trip me. Tourists passed by with cameras and oversized hats. No one recognized me. That was the point, wasn't it? They want the story to start with my fall. But I remember when the first stone was thrown. I stopped at the corner of King and Broad, where a violinist played Wayfaring Stranger. His case was open, half filled with ones and a few fives. I listened for a while, then dropped in a 10. Not for the song, for the reminder. Back at my apartment, I opened my journal, the one no one knew existed. I didn't write much, just one line. Truth doesn't need an audience. It just needs to exist. I sat in silence for a while, letting the memory of her voice linger. Not the polished one from the stage, but the one from our shared childhood bedroom, whispering secrets long since buried under silk and status. Then my phone buzzed. Unknown number. No caller ID. A message. "Watch your step, Denise. Some names aren't worth protecting anymore." I stared at it. No panic, just a quiet nod of recognition. They wanted me to feel cornered. but I'd lived in corners for years. You get good at hearing things when everyone else stops talking to you. The more they silence me, the more I listen. I didn't respond to the message. I just closed the blinds, turned off every overhead light, and sat down at the kitchen table with the only thing I trusted anymore: my journal. The pen felt heavier than usual, or maybe I just felt smaller. Either way, I opened to the middle, where pages had started to curl from how often I flipped through them. They didn't destroy my life in one day, I wrote slowly. It was inch by inch, file by file. It had started a year earlier, back when I still believed the truth mattered. Back then, I was in D.C., working as a campaign analyst on Corwin Mercer's gubernatorial team. I wasn't hired because I was family. I was hired because I was damn good at finding what didn't belong. Budgets, donor rolls, filings. My job was to catch problems before someone else did. I found one. It was tucked in a donor log that didn't match the disbursement trail. A shell account, innocuous on the surface, but the numbers didn't lie. The totals shifted in a way that suggested it was either a funnel or a very lazy cover-up. I flagged it in a report. Marked it confidential. Internal audit review. Attached a short note. Recommend review before end-of-quarter reconciliation. I didn't send it to a news outlet. I didn't go to an ethics committee. I did what professionals do. I followed protocol. The next day, that exact file appeared in a political blog known for leaks. The same formatting, the same typo in my file name, the same metadata, mine. My name became radioactive overnight. By the time I got to the office, my keycard had been deactivated. Security didn't let me in. They said someone from HR would call me. No one ever did. At first, I thought it was a mistake, an overreaction, that someone would walk it back. Instead, I got silence. I called Elowen, voicemail. I emailed Vera, auto-reply. Then Corwin sent me a message. You need time to reflect. We all make mistakes. Best not to involve outsiders. I laughed out loud when I read it. Not because it was funny, but because it was so perfectly polished. So, Corwin, the kind of sentence you write when you've rehearsed your betrayal ahead of time. Gaslighting isn't always loud. Sometimes it arrives in complete sentences, dressed in concern. After that, my inbox turned cold. Colleagues stopped replying. Lunch invites dried up. One of them even sent a group text I was copied on by mistake. Can't be associated with her right now. Just keep heads down. So I left D.C. I didn't pack much. Just enough to start over somewhere I knew the streets. Charleston wasn't a soft landing. It was just the only lease they hadn't canceled out from under me. I rented a one-bedroom over a bookstore. Spent most nights scanning news cycles and cross-referencing donation patterns from public records. No one asked me to. No one was paying me. But I couldn't sleep without knowing where it all unraveled. They made me the leak. I scribbled in my notebook. But they forgot I saw the pipe burst. I dug deep. Metadata, access logs, transfer trails. I learned more about how the Mercer machine worked in those 6 months alone than in the 2 years I was on the inside. I wrote down everything: dates, times, names, notes only I could decipher. Then, one evening, I got home to find a manila envelope on my doorstep. No return address, no note. Inside was a flash drive. Small. Unlabeled except for one sticker. Audit trail. Internal server. 3 a.m. backup. I plugged it in. The contents were encrypted, but I recognized the format. The file trees matched the ones I used when I built the original report. Someone had scraped a copy. But who? And why now? I stared at the drive resting on the table, its tiny red light blinking like a quiet dare. This wasn't over, not even close. I didn't sleep that night. The flash drive sat on my kitchen table like it had a heartbeat of its own, quietly pulsing in the dark. I couldn't shake the thought. Someone out there wanted me to see that file, and someone else would do just about anything to make sure I didn't. By the time dawn broke, I was still seated at the table, my back aching, coffee untouched. I didn't need the news to tell me what day it was. I knew from the dull weight in my chest. Some mornings just arrive heavy. I turned on the TV out of habit. Local news, muted at first. I reached for the remote and tapped the volume up, and that's when I saw her. Elowen, sitting on a pale blue couch in the studio, hair styled into effortless waves, eyes soft but knowing. The headline below her read, "The Mercer daughter speaks what family loyalty means." I didn't blink. Her voice carried that same polished tone Corwin always used when he needed people to believe a lie just enough to let it slide. "It's heartbreaking when someone you once trusted becomes a threat to everything your family built," she said. Then she added, with a practiced pause, "It's not betrayal, it's protection." I sat there, remote in hand, still as glass. I didn't throw it, didn't scream. I just replayed the segment, twice. She was good, better than I remembered. My sister had always known how to speak to a room. She could charm PTA moms and city councilmen alike before she turned 16. I knew how to read a budget. She knew how to read a crowd. The last time we'd spoken face-to-face was at a charity benefit 6 months ago. She'd pulled me into a side room with a glass of champagne in hand, laughed about something shallow, and toasted to "family still trying." I'd actually believed she meant it. Now she was on TV, folding me into the villain's corner without ever saying my name. "She's not the Denise I grew up with," Elowen continued on air. "That person would never have done this." Done what? Ask a question? I got up and walked to the old wooden chest where I kept a shoebox of things I should have thrown away. Inside was the letter, the one with the Ivy League crest, the one with my name at the top and full merit award printed in bold. I remember sitting in the principal's office my senior year. I'd worn a pressed blouse, thought they were going to congratulate me. Instead, they told me the scholarship funds had been reassigned due to departmental oversight. 2 weeks later, I read in the paper that a state judge's daughter had received an honorary merit award. Months after that, Elowen got an honorary scholarship to the same university for civic engagement. I still remember the headline. Her name was spelled out in gold font. They rewrote my story in real time, and no one noticed the cut lines. I walked to the printer, printed out a still from Elowen's interview, her smile frozen mid-spin. Then I laid it next to the scholarship letter on my desk. With a black pen, I wrote across both. "You erase people not by shouting, but by rewriting the footnotes." I slid them into a folder labeled "Personal Truths" for court. Didn't call, didn't email, didn't give them the satisfaction of knowing I was angry. I waited. Later that evening, as I sat on the floor organizing notes, my calendar buzzed with a notification. Mercer Foundation Gala, Thursday, 6:30 p.m., Magnolia Hall. The same venue I'd negotiated for them 2 years ago. The keynote speaker? Elowen. I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I whispered to the quiet room, "If you're going to burn a bridge, at least let them hear the match strike." The invitation didn't need a response. It was rescinded before I could pretend to care. I was still staring at the Mercer Foundation Gala canceled notification when I grabbed my bag, shoved in the printed documents, and headed out the door. Magnolia Hall didn't matter anymore. There was only one address that did. I didn't call ahead. I didn't ask for permission. I just walked up to the front gate of the Mercer estate like I'd done 100 times before. Except this time, I didn't bother pressing the call button with a smile. I pressed it and waited, stone-faced, knowing they were watching through the camera. The butler, Thomas, older now, same stiff posture, opened the door with a nervous glance. I told him I needed to speak with Vera. Alone. He paused, then nodded once and led me in without a word. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Like a museum sealed in glass. Nothing had moved since the last time I was there. Same vases. Same photo of Elowen and Corwin shaking hands with a senator. I scanned the room, looking not for nostalgia, but for evidence. Everything in that house had been carefully arranged to tell a story, but I knew where the footnotes were buried. Vera waited for me in Corwin's study. She stood by the fireplace, arms folded, like she'd been bracing for something she knew she couldn't stop. I didn't sit. I pulled the papers from my bag and placed them on the desk, one beside the other. The first was my mother's original will, naming me as sole trustee of the education fund and the lot on Bennett Street. The second was a public record, filed through Corwin's lawyer, listing a revised version. My name wasn't on it, not once. Vera's eyes scanned the pages, her fingers hovering but never touching. You didn't know, I said quietly, but you suspected. Tell me I'm wrong. She didn't speak right away. Her eyes stayed on the papers as if staring hard enough might erase them. Then, barely above a whisper, she said, I should have looked closer. That's on me. I didn't need more. Sometimes silence is louder than confession. Then she walked slowly to a small drawer near the bookshelves and pulled out a folder of her own. She opened it, revealing older court documents, custody files from her first marriage. I never told you this, she said, but Corwin rewrote my custody agreement once, changed the filing date, slipped it through when I was on a work trip. I lost visitation for almost a year before my lawyer even realized what had happened. I didn't flinch. He always makes it look legal, she added, and by the time you realize it isn't, you're already the crazy one. I nodded once. So I wasn't his first rewrite, just his latest. She didn't argue. I reached into my bag one last time and handed her a sealed envelope. Inside was a scanned copy of the original will, plus names of 3 legal journalists who would love a story about falsified estate documents and selective memory. You can keep being part of the silence, I said, or you can be part of the statement. She didn't respond, but she didn't stop me as I turned and walked out. The sky had already darkened when I stepped outside. My phone buzzed in my coat pocket before I reached the sidewalk. Access revoked. You are no longer on the guest list. I smiled. That was fine. The live stream link still worked. I didn't need to be in the room to change the narrative. I just needed them to know I had a copy of the script. The next morning came fast. Too fast. I'd barely closed my eyes before my alarm pulled me upright. The gala was behind me. Now came something heavier. Public Hearing Room B wasn't the courthouse proper, but it still carried the weight of judgment. Tiled floors, fluorescent lighting, and a podium that looked more like a pulpit than a legal formality. A small group had gathered, 3 journalists, a local blogger in a denim jacket, and a man from the Charleston Courier who kept fidgeting with his glasses. No fanfare, no live stream, but enough eyes to start something. My pro bono attorney, Marla, was already setting up the screen and double-checking cords. She gave me a nod. Tight, professional, the kind that didn't ask if I was ready. It assumed I had to be. I glanced at the chair next to mine, the one meant for the witness. His nameplate still sat there, J. Lyons, campaign auditor. I stared at it for a second longer than I meant to. The bailiff approached me slowly, holding a small folded note. This came in before you arrived, he said. No eye contact. I opened it. Found unresponsive in vehicle. Presumed cause, carbon monoxide inhalation. I didn't blink. I didn't tear up. Instead, I stood, walked to the table, placed the note next to his nameplate. Then I began. I was going to let him speak first, I said to the room, but it looks like I'll have to speak for both of us. The slides began. The flash drive, audit trail, 3 a.m. backup, loaded onto the screen. I walked through the metadata slowly, cleanly. Highlighted dates, access logs, ID stamps from state servers, everything that should have stayed buried but was now breathing. Then the screen went black, not flickered, not paused. Dead. The projector fan stopped spinning. The lights in the equipment panel blinked once, then went still. Marla's voice was calm but cold. That's not our side. A security officer approached. Court IT says there's a breach. They've disabled external feeds for precaution. I looked at him, then at the screen, frozen mid-slide on a bank transfer with a Mercer-associated PAC account. Interesting, I said loud enough for the room. The system never seems to crash when it lies, only when someone tells the truth out loud. A voice from the back, probably the blogger, muttered, "Jesus, this is happening live." I gathered my notes, didn't rush, didn't shout. I left the screen just as it was, cut off, but not silent. The last visible line on the projector was an account number, unmistakable. As I moved toward the exit, cameras clicked. One reporter called out, "Denise, do you have anything to say to your stepfather?" I turned. "Tell him I'm still standing," I said. "And I'm still logged in." That night, Marla's inbox flooded. 3 notices from federal clerks. My case had been flagged for national security review. Translation: sealed behind bureaucracy, buried before daylight. I flipped through every local news channel. Not one mention, no breaking alerts, no late-night coverage, just silence. I turned off the TV, sat back. They didn't kill the file, they just turned down the volume. If truth is a threat to security, maybe we're protecting the wrong things. The night hadn't even finished sinking into silence when my phone lit up again. Not a text this time, a notification from a local news app I never remembered installing. The headline slapped me harder than any courtroom gavel. Leaked police report. Drake arrested for credit fraud in 2014? Below it was a grainy mugshot. My face. Or something close enough. I clicked. The article was short, barely 3 paragraphs. No author, no sources. Just enough to set fire to the kindling they'd spent years stacking. I whispered to the room, "I've never been arrested in my life." But the damage wasn't waiting for fact-checkers. It never does. Cable anchors picked it up within the hour. "Unconfirmed," they said. "Under investigation," they added, in that careful way networks use when they're covering themselves more than the story. But it was out there. The stain. I pulled up public records. Nothing. Not a single entry. Still, it was already being shared by Elowen's campaign account, an Instagram story with the caption, "Integrity Matters." They didn't just silence me. They rewrote my past. I didn't panic. I printed the article, used a highlighter on the image hash, filed it under fabricated claims, digital forensics. Then I turned to the screen. The Mercer Foundation Gala was streaming live. Full camera crew, red carpet, donor wall behind the podium. Glittering lights that bounced off every falsehood like sequins in motion. And there she was, Elowen, standing tall behind a podium framed with fresh flowers, and the words, "Elowen Mercer Community Legacy Hall." I recognized the woodwork behind her, the curved archways, the painted crown molding. It was mine. I bought that building 3 years ago with the intent to turn it into a community mentorship center, renovated it with my own hands, pitched it to the city council, and now she was claiming it like a family heirloom. "This was a vision we brought to life for the future of Charleston," she said. Her voice was silk. The crowd clapped on cue. I didn't blink. I didn't throw anything. I just walked across the room, opened my file cabinet, and pulled out the original title deed. Still in my name, I didn't call her. I didn't post a rebuttal. I called my legal team instead. We met the next morning in a borrowed conference room behind a tax office off King Street. Marla, my attorney, sat across from me as I drafted the statement. Measured. Professional. Not a single word of anger. "I won't deny," I told her. "Let them verify everything. Invite the public to trace every document. I've got nothing to hide." She nodded. I could tell she was proud, but too cautious to show it. I created a Dropbox folder titled, "Misuse of Public Identity. Denial is Silence." Uploaded the article, the deed, the video clip of Elowen's speech, watermarked every document, then made the folder view-only, link accessible. "They stole my face and my home," I wrote in the file description. "But not my name, not yet." I was about to shut my laptop when another message pinged in. No name, no subject. Just a video file. I clicked play. 7 seconds. Elowen, standing backstage at the gala, speaking to 2 donors with her microphone still hot. "Once my sister's discredited," she said, We can tie this up in court. No more loose ends. Click. I didn't slam the lid. I didn't cry. I just closed the screen slowly, methodically. They wanted me erased. But this time, I had the pen. The air in my apartment was cold when I woke, the kind of chill that didn't come from a thermostat, but from knowing something irreversible had begun. It was still dark outside, just past 5 a.m., and the city hadn't started humming yet. Perfect. I needed quiet. Not for focus, just for resolve. I opened my laptop, hands steady, breath even. The file sat where I left it. Audit trail, 3 a.m. backup. Not the version with video, not the one they had already blacked out in public. This time, I wasn't showing anyone the content. I was sending the metadata. 3 emails. 3 reporters. I'd selected them carefully. 1 local, 1 national, 1 investigative journalist who had taken on corrupt unions and survived 2 lawsuits. I stripped out my digital signature with precision, replaced it with the unaltered credential embedded in the logs. Corwin Mercer's own login, timestamped, geotagged, and traced through a secure state terminal. I clicked send. Then I didn't move. I watched the screen, as if it would blink or change or explode, but nothing happened. Just a soft sent notification at the bottom corner. A minute passed, then another. Then one of them replied. "This metadata is clean," the email read. "If this holds, it puts Mercer at the origin of the leak he pinned on you." I didn't exhale. I didn't smile. I just clicked confirm on the press release I'd prepared days earlier. You don't win the fight by yelling. You win by who has the receipts. By 8 a.m., my lawyer called. "They've scheduled a closed tribunal," Marla said, no hesitation. "Classified session, same day." I nodded into the silence. Because of the file? She didn't answer. She didn't have to. "And Denise?" She hesitated, then added, "Kellen was let go from his position this morning. No severance, no reference." My stomach tightened. Kellen, the only one who had risked anything for me early on. The one who shared the clip, who flagged the suspicious activity logs before anyone else saw them. I checked my voicemail. His voice was soft, not bitter. "I knew the cost, but you better make this worth it." I listened to it twice. Then I deleted it. Not out of erasure, but protection. You don't keep the voices of the brave. You carry them. Back at the laptop, I opened a new folder in the directory. Labeled it, Collateral, Names They Silenced. Kellen's went first. I uploaded the original email thread, the one where he warned me they were watching our keystrokes. Then I created a public version, scrubbed my name, left his. If they want to erase people, I'll remind them who wrote the first page. By noon, I stood outside the courthouse. This one didn't have press. No spectators, no cameras, just stone walls and a pair of federal security officers who weren't from Charleston. One of them looked at me, not unkindly, and said, "You're going to be asked to sign something today. Decline." I nodded once, firm. This court wasn't where I expected to win. It was just where I expected them to lose. The tribunal recessed just before 4. No decision, no statement. Just a tight-lipped clerk handing Marla a folded summary with under review scrawled across the top like a dismissal dressed in bureaucracy. I exited through the back. Cameras still lined the front steps, waiting to snap at nothing. I didn't give them a chance. I walked the side alley instead, past the loading dock where municipal trash bins steamed in the late afternoon heat. 10 minutes later, I was back at my apartment. Home, if you could still call it that. I locked the door, drew the blinds. The room was exactly how I'd left it. Papers cleared, counters wiped. My war room had gone still. I poured a glass of water and sat at the table, where the laptop still sat shut. I wasn't ready to open it again. Instead, I reached for the slim file folder I hadn't touched in weeks. Tucked inside was a smaller envelope, old, yellowed at the edges. Thick black ink spelled out my name in a hand I hadn't seen in almost 20 years. Denise, open when they forget you. It was my father's handwriting. My real father. The one who died before I finished middle school. He'd left this for me in a safety deposit box I hadn't even known existed until years later. I opened the letter. The paper crackled. If they ever make you feel invisible, it read, remember, mirrors don't reflect ghosts. They reflect presence. Make sure yours stays. There were more words, some about legacy, some about betrayal hiding behind politeness, but that line was the one that rooted itself in my chest. I smiled. Just a little. It wasn't victory. It was memory. I folded the letter carefully and placed it into a plastic sleeve, then slid it into the folder marked Personal Roots. My phone buzzed. Blocked number. I hesitated, then hit play. Vera's voice came through low, hesitant. Not rehearsed, raw. I can't stand behind them anymore, she said. I know what he did to your scholarship, and your name. I should have said something sooner. She paused. The silence was long. I'm not asking for forgiveness. But if you still choose truth, I'll stand when it's time. The line cut. No outro, no second take. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. Instead, I forwarded the voice note to Marla with the subject line, for the record, insider confirmation. Then I closed the app and stood in the kitchen for a moment. The hum of the refrigerator was the only sound. That, and my pulse. Steady now. I poured another cup of water, set it beside the letter. Forgiveness isn't forgetting. It's just letting go of the leash around your own neck. The late sunlight angled in through the blinds, casting sharp lines across the table. I didn't chase it. I just watched it move. Then, a ping. Calendar update. Final motion hearing. Courtroom C. Public session. 10 a.m. I stared at it for a beat, then opened the entry. My name was listed under witness of record. They tried to end my sentence before it began. Now, I finish it myself. I stood at the curb, dress shoes clicking against the pavement as I stepped out of the rideshare. No cuffs, no handlers, no escort. Just me, wearing black slacks, a blazer that hadn't seen daylight in weeks, and a quiet that felt sharper than steel. Outside the courthouse, the crowd had already split itself. Protesters on both sides held signs, some with my face circled in red, others with "Let her speak" scrawled across poster board in shaky permanent marker. A few news vans idled at the edge of the square. Someone from a podcast shoved a mic toward my shoulder, asking something I didn't catch. I didn't stop walking. You don't explain to those who never wanted the answer. You show the truth to those who knew to look. Inside, the public hearing room had filled quickly, the kind of full that's quiet not from respect, but from anticipation. Reporters lined the rear benches. Alawan sat 2 rows back, flawless in beige, her lips pressed together in a line that couldn't decide if it was smug or scared. The judge called for order. Then the doors opened again, and he walked in. Admiral Thane Rourke wasn't announced. He didn't need to be. The sound of his shoes across the floor was announcement enough. When he stood at the witness table, the entire rhythm of the room changed. Even the clerk sat straighter. During questioning, he kept his answers tight, controlled. Yes, I worked closely with the Mercer campaign's National Security Advisory Group. Yes, I met Ms. Drake during a policy retreat 3 years ago. No, I didn't know about the shell accounts until she pointed them out to me. The lawyer paused, then asked, "And is it true she saved your life during that same retreat?" Rourke looked directly at me. "She found me collapsed in the hallway," he said. "Called it in, administered CPR until the paramedics arrived. I was clinically dead for 74 seconds. If you ask me who I'd trust with classified data, it'd be the woman who pulled me off the floor and refused to let my name become a eulogy." Silence fell so fast it almost felt physical. Even the judge blinked slower. And then, as if choreographed, Marla stood. My client would now like to submit a supplemental exhibit, access logs, sourced anonymously but verified independently. The file loaded on screen. Timestamps, IP trails, user IDs. The name that glared from the screen wasn't mine. It was the assistant to Corwin Mercer, his personal digital gatekeeper, known for uploading all campaign content. The entry was clean. No edits. No overlap. Just one login, one timestamp, one file transfer, linked directly to the server that leaked the original documents they pinned on me. I leaned forward. They spent 2 years building a lie with my face, I said. It took one entry log to show whose hands were dirty. Murmurs rippled. Phones lit up. I could see the journalist from Channel 12 tweeting in real time. A live blog popped up on a projected screen near the door. The headline read, "Mercer under fire as leak origins questioned. Drake's metadata holds." I didn't smile. This wasn't about vindication. It was correction. I glanced at Elowen. For the first time, her hands weren't steady. She fiddled with her bracelet, eyes not quite meeting mine. Her mask cracked just enough to show a flicker of uncertainty. That was enough. The hearing wrapped just after noon. I walked out the same way I came in, on my own. The reporters pressed in again. I kept moving until one voice cut through. "Denise, is this the beginning of your comeback?" I paused, turned slowly. "No," I said. "This is the correction they didn't want in the margins." By the time I reached my apartment that evening, the buzz outside had thinned but not vanished. A few stragglers with camera phones lingered across the street, hoping I'd step back into the spotlight unguarded. I didn't give them the chance. Inside, I kicked off my shoes and left my blazer draped over the arm of the couch. I didn't turn on any lights. I just moved toward the window and sat in the dusk blue quiet, tea cooling between my palms. The hum of the city slipped in under the blinds. The truth had landed today, not with a bang, but with enough clarity to finally quiet the noise inside my own head. I wasn't sure how to breathe yet in this new version of the world, the one where people listened because they had to, not because I'd raised my voice. I didn't check my inbox. It was already flashing with more unread messages than I cared to count. I needed something steadier than headlines and speculation. So I pulled up the encrypted report I'd commissioned weeks ago, the one from my own IT consultant. Quiet, expensive, thorough. It had finally come through. Lines of redacted code, server logs, packet transfers, access audits, and beneath it all, a pattern. Not a glitch, not a coincidence. My court-issued devices had been throttled for months, bandwidth reduced, upload speeds capped, and certain ports disabled entirely. And every single slowdown matched one of my public appearances, major hearings, or media requests. They didn't just block my voice, they limited the microphone. I saved the file, encrypted it again, and slid it into a drive labeled Network Suppression, Sealed Record. I didn't plan to go public with it, not yet. But it mattered. The record mattered. Just as I was shutting my laptop, the call box buzzed from downstairs. I checked the screen. Vera. I didn't buzz her in. I walked down. She stood in the lobby in a plain gray coat, holding a manila envelope like it weighed more than it should. There were no cameras, no reporters, just two women who used to eat at the same table, pretending not to recognize the scars they gave each other. She handed it to me without meeting my eyes. "It's the original scholarship letter," she said. "You deserve to have it in your hands, not in their safe." I didn't thank her. She started to speak again, but her voice cracked, then steadied. "I hope your piece doesn't need me in it," she said. "But I wanted you to have this." I nodded once. Not in forgiveness, just acknowledgement. Back upstairs, I opened the envelope carefully. There it was, my name, the seal, the full award offer. No asterisk, no revisions. I slipped it into the archive, next to my father's letter. Then I labeled the folder. Burned. Not erased. Healing doesn't mean letting them back in. It just means knowing I never needed their door. I brewed a fresh cup of tea and sat back down. Outside, the street lamps flickered on one by one. No fanfare. No applause. Just light, doing what it was built to do. The television buzzed softly. I turned it on, then muted it instantly. Corwin's face filled the screen. Press conference. Same rehearsed expression. The same defiant spin. He was saying something about public trust, about timing, about unnecessary distractions from real leadership. I watched his mouth move, then looked away. Beside me sat the court document I still hadn't signed. Let him finish his speech. I already wrote my last line. 1 week later, I walked into the courthouse with my back straight and my medals pinned. Not as a defendant, not as a witness scrambling to be heard. I walked in wearing my service blues, every ribbon earned, every pin exactly where it belonged. The hall hushed before the door even closed behind me. No shouting, no protests, just camera shutters clicking in quiet sync, and somewhere near the back of the room, a single voice whispering, "That's her." I didn't look. I didn't need to. An older man seated by the aisle, Vietnam cap, trembling hand, rose to his feet. Not dramatic, not performative. Just a salute, a moment. I nodded, not out of pride, but recognition. I took my seat as the judge entered. "Court is now in session," he said. "Final motion hearing, case ID 548231. Corwin wasn't there. His lawyer submitted a statement on his behalf. Of course he did. My name was called. I stood. And this time, so did the gallery. The judge looked out, clearly taken aback by the silent solidarity. He cleared his throat. "Ms. Drake is hereby cleared of all implied or direct association with the aforementioned data leak. All charges dropped. Case dismissed with no further findings." It was done. Just like that. No monologue, no thunderclap of justice. Just a line entered into record that would unwrite 2 years of being erased. Outside, the air felt different. Lighter, but not soft. The kind of lightness that comes from a storm finally passing. Not because it chose to, but because someone built the shelter. Reporters gathered, but this time, they waited. I stepped to the mic. "This was never about proving I didn't do it," I said. "It was about proving how easy it is to believe I did." I paused. The crowd leaned in. The next woman who gets erased might not have a file, might not have backup, might not have a general or a press pass or a microphone. So if you're listening now, make sure the next truth doesn't need a witness to matter. I stepped back. No questions. I walked off the platform and into a different chapter of my life. That afternoon, I unlocked the door to a new place. Not flashy, not big, but mine. The walls were bare, except for one frame. My father's letter, right above the desk. The desk itself held just one folder. Drake Foundation, Whistleblower Resource Draft. I opened my laptop, typed the first line of the mission statement. We protect those who speak when others won't. Just before sundown, there was a knock. A girl, maybe mid-20s, nerves in her fingers, stood holding a flash drive. Her eyes flicked down to the medals on my chest, then back to my face. "I heard what you did," she said. "I think I have something you'll want to see." I didn't ask for credentials. I opened the door wider. They burned bridges. I built a signal. And I wasn't done telling the truth. I was just getting better at broadcasting it.